Anyway, some dogs left a message for their owners saying that they're waiting for them to come home so they can take them for a walk, okay, because of all the food they have. Well, we are gathered here this evening, as we have on many occasions through the years, to celebrate our presidents. Our single president this year is Theodore Roosevelt, and what I'm going to do is lay the groundwork. I'm going to lay the groundwork for Theodore Roosevelt, well, what he encountered when he became president of the United States. Because we were just going into the new 20th century. In other words, like, I'm getting feedback, Bill.
You're good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Anyway, TR was our 26th president of the United States. He served from 1901 until 1910. He was the youngest president of the United States at the age of 42. He was the first modern president of the United States. The stature and influence of the office began with Teddy Roosevelt. Although the presidency did begin to amass power during the 1880s, TR was almost singularly responsible for completing the transaction of the office to a strong and effective executive. It made the presidency the center of American politics. Now, you have to ask yourself, well, how did he do it? Well, TR accomplished this through force of his personality and his aggressive execution action, or executive action. He challenged prevailing notions of the limited government and individualism, and that government, he maintained, should serve as an agent of reform for the people. His presidency endowed the progressive movements with credibility for welfare reform, regulation, and the conservation movement. Don't break up on it. It's got a real problem with it. It's the metal body. His desire. Did you pull the plug on me, Bill? Okay, he's going to give me another one. If this one doesn't work, I'm going to reject it.
Okay. Hello? I want to see if I can fool this thing. Next. Hello? Sucker. All right, I think I might have been able to solve the issues here. Let's see. His desire to make society fair and equitable with economic hello. Can you hear me now? I'm I'm so glad we invested in digital microphones. I know. I'm being victimized. Anyway, TR had the desire to make society fair and equitable, with economic possibilities for all Americans, and that lay behind much of TR's programs. TR also revolutionized U.S. foreign affairs. He became involved in Latin America, oversaw the Panama Canal negotiations to advocate for U.S. interests, and militarily intervened in between Venezuela and Santo Domingo, which is now Dominican Republic, to preserve the stability in the region. He worked with Congress to strengthen the U.S. Navy, to deter potential enemies from targeting the U.S., and applied his energies to negotiating agreements and working to balance power throughout the world. Surprisingly enough, for these efforts, he received the Nobel Peace Prize. As such, the first president to achieve such international prominence. His forward thinking and action encompassed every ideal later enshrined in the New Deal of FDR, the Fair Deal of Harry S. Truman, the New Frontier of John F. Kennedy, and the Great Society of Lyndon Baines Johnson. Finally, Roosevelt, FDR, no, TR, introduced exuberance into the presidency. Lillian Cunningham, who had the podcast series Presidential, stated he was someone who unabashedly loved being president. Someone who thought that being president was just the absolute best, coolest, most fun job on earth. And he was someone who altered the presidency and the country and the course of the 20th century historically, based by being an exuberant, unstoppable ball of energy. Now, he didn't always have it easy. TR came from a wealthy New York family.
As good as I can do, you're gonna look wonderful.
Finally, Roosevelt, no, that's not right. TR came from a wealthy New York family, but he did not have it easy through life. He was born on October 27, 1858 in Manhattan. Roosevelt survived the tragedy of losing his wife and mother on the same day in the same house in 1884 within 4 hours. He wrote in his diary, placing a big X, and it was the blackest day of his life. And thereafter, he left and went to the Dakotas. And you'll hear more about that later on. The tragedy of losing his wife and his mother in the same day was really extreme. And it really, I think, propelled him to do extremely dangerous things. He did a very dangerous military charge of San Juan Hill in Cuba in 1898, for which he was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously in 2001. And he survived an assassination attempt in 1912. And he passed away in 1919 at the age of 60 from a blood clot that lodged in his heart. TR was at the right place in time to take on the new century. From 1900 forward, it was the beginning of a tumultuous time for the United States, as well as the global affairs. Just to give you a brief snapshot of things that occurred during this time period, in 1900, the Yukon Gold Rush began. Remember, that was out in California for the teachers here. It was a smaller world because we did not have what I would categorize as highly refined communication skills, electronic, etc. The U.S. had only 250,000 miles of rail that had been placed on the ground and were operational. We were just beginning to do the first hydroelectric dam, and it was under construction in Niagara Falls.
Steel is beginning to be used as girders to strengthen building construction, and the first skyscrapers started to appear. Electric bulb, record players, and kinescope were introduced. Ford introduced mass production of automobiles, and 200,000 were on the road in 1910. Of course, the roads really sucked. Black sharecroppers were just short of breaking every season, and white sharecroppers in the West fared no better. Blue laws and Jim Crow laws flourished. Capitalists and robber barons grew in economic power in deference to the 1890 U.S. antitrust laws. Conservative Socialist Party begins to grow. Coal mine and steel strikes occurred 1900, 1902, 1903, and 1904. And immigration from the period of 1882 through 1910 was the highest rate in U.S. history. Alone in 1907, 1.3 million foreigners arrived in Ellis Island. Mostly farmers, they did not go to the West, but settled in racial and religious ghettos and took advantage of manufacturing jobs that were springing up throughout the cities. The boom and bust economic had to make way for globalization. That's when we're starting to see that occur. We had the Filipino people, based upon land that had been given to us after the war with Spain. Investigative reporting, muckrakers, uncover corruption in coal mines, housing laws, meat packing industry, and stories like The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. I'm sure everybody has read it. And here's a test for you. How much rat excrement can be left in meat after it leaves the packing company? 1/10 of 1% of the volume. It's still enforced today. I thought you'd like that after that beautiful dinner. That's my dark humor. The film industry becomes the mass art form for the working class with first 30-minute film. Wait for it. A Trip to the Moon. Now, I can't say that was made here in Houston, but we had the Russian-Japanese War. The Japanese won. Britain grants freedom to Australian penal colony with the result of Australia becoming a new state in the British Empire. Now, I could keep on going on because there's all kinds of tidbits out there. But now we will have our MC for the night, Bob Fuller, spend time on stage with President Roosevelt to discuss other insights into what TR experienced during his presidency and years afterwards. So let's welcome our 26th president, Teddy Roosevelt. Come on down. Bob?
As I told you before, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us tonight our President, 26th President of the United States, Mr. Theodore Roosevelt. Absolutely. Please sit down. And we'll ask you some questions. You have your speech in your pocket?
It would have only taken 90 minutes or so.
Okay. They're not going anywhere. We blocked the door.
Well, that speech saved my life, once you know.
So you hear about that. Sit down. Well, let's get started, sir. Mr. President, I understand that you and your brother saw Abraham Lincoln's funeral procession in New York City in 1865.
We did. We were lucky enough to be at my grandfather's house there on Union Square. And we perched in an upper window and watched the procession go by. Magnificent. 18 gray horses pulling the massive hearse. The somber beat of the drums, thousands of marching troops. A great send-off for a great man. And I am very honored to share a beside with him.
Very true, very true. Another great man. Is it true, sir, that you have a great, excellent memory?
Not so much anymore. Advanced age and too much boxing. You know, now I think they call it head trauma.
I know people would like to know this, sir. Mr. President, could you clarify your relationship between Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, and yourself?
Well, Franklin was the son of my fourth cousin, James Roosevelt I. And so that would make him my fifth cousin. Eleanor was my brother Elliot's daughter. So she was my niece. And I actually presented the bride at their wedding in New York. Later on, Franklin would be the 32nd president of the United States.
Very good. I know a lot of people have always been wondering about that. I know I have. Sir, they say that you are blind in one eye. Could you tell us how did that happen?
Yes, a lot of people don't know that. When I was governor of New York, I boxed on a daily basis with various sparring partners and carried that on into my White House years. Well, one of my partners hit me very hard on my left cheek, detached my retina, and left me blind in that eye. I managed to muddle through with nobody discovering my secret, and later on took up jiu-jitsu instead.
I see that your activity has continued on.
Yes, it has.
Very well. Is it true that you drink coffee by the gallons?
Love the stuff. In the morning, I have a nice large cup of coffee that's half coffee, half milk with 5 to 7 lumps of sugar. The rest of the day, it's black for the other 30 to 40 cups, but I carry on with the same amount of sugar. Later on in life, I found that I needed to switch to a saccharin sweetener because I didn't want people to think that I was that layabout William Howard Taft.
Obviously, he was very close to the bathroom at all times. Sir, Mr. President, I understand that you were called a badass. Can you give us an idea how you got that nickname?
Well, there's a couple of stories during my lifetime, I'm sure, that helped give me that name. I went into a saloon in Mingusville, North Dakota when I was living out west, wanting to have a libation at the end of the day. A drunk patron there fired several shots at me, put his gun in my face, called me Four Eyes, and ordered me to buy the bar a round. I thrashed him severely, beat him into unconsciousness, drug him to a shed outside, and locked him in until the next day. Later on, wanting to navigate the Missouri River some friends and I bought a clinker-built boat to do that, and some ruffians stole the boat from us. We spent 3 days building a new boat, pursued them downriver, caught them, and then it took 8 days travel to navigate the river back. Once we got back, it was in my right to hang them, but I assumed my duties of deputy sheriff and locked them away instead. And then there's the whole San Juan Hill thing.
We'll get to that later. In fact, let me bring that up. We understand you went out of your way to recruit different types of people for the Rough Riders. Can you tell us about this process?
Well, I had resigned my office of Assistant Secretary of the Navy, so I sent out a letter asking for volunteers for a cavalry regiment that Colonel Leonard Wood and I were going to start. We set up our recruiting post at a place called the Menger Hotel in San Antonio, there on the patio. And we had all types come in. We had Ivy Leaguers, we had scions of Eastern families looking for adventure. We had cowboys, we had sheriffs, we had Plains Indians, all make and manner, all wanting a taste for adventure. But they had to be hardy fellows, and they had to know how to ride a horse. We trained very hard there at Camp Riverside in San Antonio. And then in the evenings, it was my tradition to buy my men a keg of beer or two at the Menger's bar. Colonel Wood frowned upon that immensely and lectured us about it constantly.
Speaking of the Rough Riders at San Juan Hill, can you give us a brief story of your famous charge up San Juan Hill?
We were tasked with taking San Juan Heights so we could have a coordinated land and naval assault on Santiago de Cuba, which San Juan Heights overlooked. Early in the battle, I was told that General Wood had fallen. So I rode to the fore, rallying my troops, who, by the way, could not take their horses up the hill. And I became entangled in barbed wire with my horse, so I dismounted and we all charged Kettle Hill at first. We beat the Spanish there, and then to the right of Kettle Hill was San Juan Hill. We went down Kettle and up San Juan and cleared the Spaniards from there and secured the heights. They said it was a brave charge. I say it was foolhardy, but it worked.
And made you famous.
And made me famous.
As part of the Spanish-American War, how did the U.S. come in possession of the Philippines?
Treaty of Paris in 1898. Spain gave up all rights to sovereignty for Cuba and departed. They ceded to us Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Now, we had to pay Spain $20 million compensation for the cession of the Philippines. And that's how we came into possession of that.
Well, that must have been quite a surprise for the Filipino people. Were they pleased with the United States being involved in their country?
Some of the elite were, yes, but there was a faction that had expected the Philippines to gain independence like Cuba did, but that did not happen, and they were not happy. That faction fought a war with us from 1899 to 1902. And during that war, nearly 250,000 civilians died from disease and famine just because of that war. But before the end of the war, we set up a civilian government with William Howard Taft as the governor general. He was appointed by President McKinley. And the Filipinos had an elected assembly to represent them. And their own courts, by the way.
So it ended up good. Ended up very well for the Philippines.
Yes, it did.
Speaking of your political life, is it true that the Republican leaders in the country did not want you as the president?
No. People like myself and Williams Jennings Bryan, progressives, they did not like our ideas about monopolies, trusts, the robber barons of the time. And the Republican National Committee, powers that be, along with J.P. Morgan and John Rockefeller, just to name a couple, decided that they would try to pigeonhole me in the vice presidency. And that way, they would kill my political aspirations for good. Little did they know that a few months later, President McKinley would be assassinated, and I would have my day in court.
Very good, sir. Mr. President, you were the first president to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, Japan approached me in 1905 and wanted me to negotiate an end to their war with Russia. We set about that task in a place called Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And in September 1905, the treaty was signed. And that is what they gave me the Nobel Prize for.
So we were involved with the treaty between the Russians and the Japanese
Yes,
in that treaty. How did that affect us, the United States?
well, the Treaty of Portsmouth brought the United States to the forefront in world diplomacy. The world saw that we could be a peacemaker. However, the Japanese Empire never trusted us again. And it brought in an era of competition between us and the Japanese Empire in the Pacific region. Later on, I also solved a dispute between Germany and France on the division of Morocco.
So you were definitely.
I tried.
One of your biggest accomplishments, Mr. President, was that when the French gave up the Panama Canal, you got the U.S. involved. How did this come about, and what were the reasons you felt that the United States was in the, to have the canal was in the best interest of the United States?
Well, we always needed a shorter route from east to west and west to east. So I figured it was in our best interest, especially for our Navy, to be able to get from ocean to ocean quickly instead of having to navigate Cape Horn. The French failed in 1895 basically because of disease and the fact that they wanted a sea level canal, which meant they would have to dig massive amounts of rock out in order to attain a level. We went in and decided to use a lock system which raised the ships on one side and then lowered them on the other to the other ocean.
So one of the oceans is higher,
Yes, Atlantic is higher,
the Atlantic is higher.
so you had to sail in, lower them to the Pacific, and vice versa, sail in, raise them to the Atlantic.
And what was the trip, you talked about the Cape Horn, how big of a trip was that?
It's roughly 8,000 nautical miles.
I can see why the canal was a very important
Yes, it was. Yes, it
for
was.
the United States. Were there any environmental or medical breakthroughs resulting from the work done in Panama Canal?
The main environmental issue is the time saved from the trip around Cape Horn. Medical-wise, we determined that malaria and yellow fever were mosquito-borne illnesses, and we set about wiping out the mosquitoes. We completely eradicated yellow fever and learned to control malaria. We cleared massive amounts of forest. We installed municipal water systems so the people there did not have to collect rainwater to drink. We fumigated. We sprayed the swamps with kerosene to kill the breeding grounds for the mosquitoes. It was a massive undertaking, but it worked.
We understand that you ran for president in 1912, having broken your word to the American public in 1904, that you would never run again. Can you explain why you broke your word?
Well, that ne'er-do-well, William Howard Taft again, was never long on leadership capabilities. So I felt that the way things were going, we needed a strong leader in the White House to run the country because he was a total failure. He meant well, but he meant well feebly.
You gather we didn't care for him.
Not a bit, no. Totally useless man. And fat to boot.
Is it true, Mr. President, that you were shot in an attempted assassination and still gave your speech? That's unheard of.
October 1912, I was going to give a speech in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A deranged saloon keeper who thought that the ghost of William McKinley was telling him that I needed to be assassinated shot me. It went through my glass case, through my folded speech, and lodged in my right chest. Well, I calmed the crowd so they didn't lynch the ruffian. And since I wasn't coughing blood, I knew I would be all right, so I went in and gave my speech. I think it lasted roughly 90 minutes. Now, one of the first things I told my audience was, I think you can see that I've just been shot. However, it takes more than that to stop a bull moose.
Is it true, sir, that your son, Teddy Jr., and you are the only one of two father's sons who have received the Congressional Medal of Honor?
Yes.
Can you enlighten us on how that came about?
Well, they deemed I should have the Medal of Honor for my gallant actions at San Juan Hill. I was just doing my duty. But they gave it to me posthumously. I guess they didn't want to make me more famous than I was. Now, Ted was the only general officer to go ashore on D-Day in the initial assault, June 6, 1944. He was given the Medal of Honor for his gallant leadership of troops that morning while on the beach. Unfortunately, about a month later, he died in his sleep of a heart attack. And he and his brother Quentin are buried there in the American Cemetery at Normandy, side by side.
Well, I have one last question, sir. We appreciate all your time and your explanation of some of the things in your life. But one of the things we'd like to really know about is what is with that teddy bear sitting next to you there?
Ah, the teddy bear. Well, you know, the teddy bear, after I settled the coal miners' strike in 1902, I was worn out, and the governor of Mississippi invited me on a hunting trip there, which I gladly accepted. Now, they did not want me to be disappointed by not getting a bear, so they used dogs to chase one down, roped it, tied it to a tree, and then came and got me to dispatch the animal. Wow, that's not sporting at all. I absolutely refused and walked away. The press that were with us at the time immediately reported it. A Washington Post cartoonist started drawing a cartoon bear that he called Teddy's Bear. A couple that ran a knick-knack company in New York, the lady made a teddy bear in the image of that cartoon, sent it to me for my grandchildren. They asked my permission to sell them, which I readily gave. And of course, strangely, the bear was more popular in Germany at the time. I can't explain that. But now this bear, one of you is going to take this bear home with you tonight. So, with your right hand, reach under your chair and feel and see if you have an envelope. If you have an envelope, read it. Congratulations, you own a teddy bear. Who's the lucky winner?
Come up and get your bear.
I hope you brought a wheelbarrow.
Now she's gonna have to explain to her family why she's sleeping with Ted E. Bear.
Congratulations.
Oh, you're- Mr. President, thank you very much for your time.
You're quite welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, and if you do not know him by name, Mike Owen. Mike Owen. And better known as Sandy Owen's husband. Do you have, before we go, anybody have any questions for Teddy or for Jim Apple about our president?
I have a microphone.
Okay, one of the things that, as usual, we're gonna need some help from you strong young men to take down some of the tables on the dance floor. Hold on. I'm sorry, question.
Raffle.
Oh, raffle. Oh, we were just gonna take the money and run.
Hang on one second.
Come on up there.
Listen, I would like to give my appreciation to Michael Owen Because if you, you know, the way this worked was, I was looking at a picture of Teddy Roosevelt, and I looked across the aisle and I said, son of a... And that was over at the dinner for the flag people. I said, that's gotta work. I said, what did the vice commander? I said, do you see what I see? Yeah, I see what you see. Well, I approached Michael, and he says, what the hell do you want? I sent him a text, and I got a response back. What the hell do you want? And when I explained it to him, he began to get interested. And I basically told him I was going to outline the program for him, give you the subject matter, and then I want you to make it your own words. And I think he's done one terrific job. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have some prizes here tonight, and what we're going to have is a $50 gift certificate. Then we're going to draw a bottle of wine. We're going to have another $50 gift certificate. We're going to buy a bottle of, or raffle a bottle of whiskey. We're going to have another $50 gift certificate, and then we're going to have 4 $10 cards to Corrales. It's just money off of the deal. So, Mr. President, would you be so kind to draw a out of the $50 gift card? Okay.
Of course. Now, if I win,
You win.
Okay,
I'll read it.
last three.
Last three numbers are 4, 8, 5.
Look at me. No, somebody else. 485. 485.
485.
485.
Right here.
You got it. Hey, here we go. And so the $50 gift certificate is from Kevin Hansel with Better Homes and Garden Renovator. Okay. So. You got it. Okay. Kevin's in Indiana. So the next gift is a bottle of Woodford Preserve, and that's a nice little gift there. All right.
Okay. I can't see it.
Number 330. 330.
There we go. Only one. Check it out. Hank Boucher. All right. So now we're going,
folks.
huh?
Let's say that's Hank Boucher or something.
So now we're going back for another $50 gift certificate. There sure is a lot of tickets in that one, okay?
Was going to say 483. 553. 553.
There we go.
David Wall.
Amen.
David Wall.
Well, the next one is a bottle of Truchard wine. This is a vineyard in California, but the people that started came from Columbus, Texas. Okay.
Number 194. 194.
There we go. Now this is
another $50 gift certificate from Kevin Hansel. Oh, Mary Davis won the one.
Wash my hands, can't do a thing.
Number 153. 153.
There we go. Way in there.
Phyllis Hines. Phyllis Hines.
One last chance, folks. One last chance. 4 $10 off cards from Carrabba's.
Number is 563. 563. Darrell, there we go. 563. Huh, that's it? Okay, folks, that's all we've got. Thank you very much for coming. As I said, oh,
I know that there are some people here that have been trying to win money through the Publishers Clearinghouse. I just want to let you know, you don't have to try anymore, because today in the mail, I got the check for $5.
we finally have a winner for Publishers Clearinghouse. Okay, remember we need